I believe that white progressives cause the most daily damage to people of color.
It's the strangest thing. Like, you read a book like, and yeah, we're going to have to be specific, White Fragility.
Are all white people racist? What's the answer to that? And the answer is...
Topics for discussion include, but are not limited to, race essentialism, how anti-racists see themselves, how anti-racists see other people, shame and self-flagellation, the erosion of individuality, and then Hello and welcome back to the Laytonicles channel. It is I, the Layton in question, and today we are finally going to be finishing off our review of Robin DiAngelo's Nice Racism, the sequel to White Fragility, the book that spent over 100 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. And if I were to give a summary in a single sentence, it would simply be that all white people are racist. End of sentence. That was it. There wasn't a list. That's the thing. And so even if you're not familiar with this book in particular, which at this point, how can you not be? It doesn't matter, because the ideas within it or similar ones will be coming to an environment near you soon. An institution, a corporation, a school, academia, so on and so forth. It'll be good for you to know what is inside books like these and the ways in which they're influencing honestly everything at this point. Media, entertainment. The review miniseries has been pretty linear, so I covered the first third, the second third, and now the final third, because that's how fractions work, in that kind of order. And so as a refresher, because it's been so long, I'm almost certain everybody needs one. The first installation we covered primarily, it was getting the foundations right. We covered CRT, critical race theory. What does that mean? We also went over what is meant by terms such as nice racism. And then we also went over what equity means and how you would even go about getting equity and why you probably wouldn't even want it, even if you got it in the first place. Bitch. And then from there, with those foundations laid down, we started to get elbow deep into, you know, the meat and potatoes, so to speak. I want to end my life right now for saying that. We started having more direct critical retorts, so on, in the second episode. And that was in response to ideas such as outwoking and the idea that white silence is violence, and also why seemingly nobody hates woke white women more than other woke white women. In the event that you haven't seen either of those episodes and you're interested, you don't need to leave this video. I'll have end cards so you can watch them there and then. This miniseries was designed so you can watch it out of order. As this is the final installation of this miniseries, it would obviously have the most conclusory thoughts within it, and I'm trying to blast through as soon as possible, baby boy. However, I should probably, in the event that this is your first rodeo, I'll give a condensed version of the why is this relevant to you. Now, in the event that you've heard me say it twice already, you can jump to this timestamp. I'll do the chapters thing so it's easy to find, and you can just go from there. You can jump in like Corbin Blue. But for those of you that are new or just want a refresher for, I don't know, whatever reason, maybe you just like hearing me speak, bro. As I said already, the ideas in books like these are coming to every facet of your life, be that media, entertainment, academia, schooling, even medicine for that matter. Here's preferential treatment based on your race, so on and so forth. So it's probably a good idea for you to be able to grapple with, so to speak, ideas in texts like these. Additionally, and admittedly by Robin DiAngelo herself, these books they're written by white people for white people. And given that the topic is this treatment of people that look like me, whatever that means, you know, I feel like it's only makes sense that somebody that is not a white people, again, I don't know why I showed you the back of my hand as though you can't see my face. How are we supposed to be treated? Because maybe the ideas that you're espousing in texts like these aren't actually what... Additionally, this is the second mini-series that I've done in this style, so to speak. The first was on the previous text, which was White Fragility, and at the time of recording has racked up over 500,000 views, which, you know, given the topic, who would have thought that there is a salivating group of people that give a shit about deep academic topics like this? Is this deep? academia? I don't really know, to be honest. It's somewhere in the middle. It's a bit pop academia. Anyway, and on that topic, I suppose, of academia, I have a master's degree, and that's the only use that I get out of it. Hey, YouTube, that free website, I have a master's degree. Do I put it to use in any other facet? No, I was bamboozled and lied to, of course. But I'm just bringing that up because if there's any academic terms or sophistry that ordinarily, ordinarily you may not be able to understand, but me, I'll be able to go through that for you. I am your humble torch bearer, my broski. I'm not trying to convince you with whatever I'm about to say. These are simply my thoughts, my analysis. If you like what I have to say, great. If you don't like what I have to say, that's also great. Wow, isn't democracy beautiful? I'm trying to formulate my thoughts, basically, and you are in the passenger seat, and hopefully in the comment section, because these only work with your participation also. This is about the discussion. This isn't believe what I say, otherwise you're a bad person. What won't this video have, I hear you ask? Ad breaks, so you can just watch this at your own leisure. But what will this video have, I hear you ask? Page numbers, citations, quotes, jokes, analysis, other words. In previous installments of reviews like these, I have compared them to hot ones in that you start off with little baby boy kisses on them, you know what I mean? It's not that spicy, then it gets hotter over time. Whoa! As I said, because this is the final installment, it will probably be pretty spicy off rip. But yeah, that's the format. The longer you stay, the more you get out of it. Final thing, as Robin DiAngelo would do for her own audience, trigger warning, there will be jokes.
I do use humor, and I want to say a little bit about why I use humor. It is my style.
And that is it, boys and girls. We have made it to the promised land. Drop a like if you're excited for the kid. If you drop a like if you're... Drop a like if the sky is blue. This is Nice Racism and the Times That We Are Living In, reviewed together. So the first heading that we have is BIPOC and Race Essentialism. This will be a precursor to the second subheading, let's say. I'm likely going to name the video How Anti-Racists See Black People, and so this section is a precursor to that. Strap in, you're in for quite the ride. It only seems fitting that we start out by talking about the two halves of the CRT equation, so to speak. That being white people and everyone else. White people and people of colour. Did we decide these terms? No, but I'm going to get into that. So, on page 19 of Nice Racism, that being the Roman numerals, Robin DiAngelo writes, throughout this book, I will discuss racism in binary terms. White people and people of colour, white people and racialised people, white people and BIPOC people. We've already gone over this. BIPOC people, Black, Indigenous, people of colour people, grammatically is a fucking disgrace. I'm just going to come out and say it. We're jumping back a little bit so we can jump forward with context needed. The point at which that I read this, I'm like, oh no, she's doing it again. White people, everyone else. And previously, I've drawn an analogy by saying, oh, that's like saying every colour that's blue and every colour that's not blue. Imagine you're fucking buying crayons or some shit. And the pack of crayons says, every colour except blue. Why does blue get specificity, yet all the other colours are just obfuscated into this one thing? There's so much talk of decentering whiteness in conversations like these, and it's like, well, first of all, think of a pie chart that's got everything in it except for the whites. It's like, where does your attention go? Decentering whiteness? It seems to be putting it forward, if anything else. So this kind of obfuscation, you know, white people here, everybody else over there, if this was done by any other group, by which I mean a non-leftist group, so to speak, this would probably fall under or be referred to as erasure. Hello, have you met my friend? They are a people of colour. No, they're black, bro. That's Jamal, bro. That's, Sadiq, bro. I don't know. At this point, I should probably go over what I mean by essentialism. And that essentially is to say that there is an essence. These are black people. Here's what being black means. Here's white people. Here's what being white means. And as an example of this, dichotomy between the whites and everyone else. This is from White Fragility, page 7. I am a white American raised in the United States. I have a white frame of reference and a white worldview. I move through the world with a white experience. What is a frame? What is a white frame of reference? What is a white worldview? What is the essence of that? Because I presume if you asked 100 whites and likewise 100 blacks and you all ask them, what does it mean to be that? They're probably all going to come to different answers. So when she says a white frame of reference, it's like, is it a monolith? Are white people a monolith? Are black people a monolith? Do they merely get racialized worldviews, racialized frames of reference? And what are the commonalities within that? Because within this whole fucking book, bro, within 2 of them actually, that's never even specified. What is the essence of it? If you're going to be racially essentialist, bro, at least, bro, speak from your fucking chest, you know what I mean? Say what the essence is. And lo and behold, this is essentially what the beginning of identity politics is. You're black, and therefore I can assume that you think X, Y, and Z. You're white, and therefore I can assume you think A, B, and C. So now that race essentialism is out the way, hopefully, you have an idea. Essentialism, this is what it means to be black, this is what it means to be white. Never any specificity about it, but, white worldview, black worldview, we can't get along, type shit. I want to go over who is deciding these terms precisely. Terms like BIPOC, people of colour, so on and so forth. Because there was a point, again during the beginning of the book, for context, we're primarily on the latter third, but again, the jumping backwards for context sake. There's a point where I thought she may have some humility in this book, let's say, but that seemingly goes out the window. So page 18 of the Roman numerals, she says, further, there's no consensus among people of colour about the term. Some appreciate that it is more inclusive, others see it as erasure. Me? Oh my gosh, literally me? Sandra Garcia, explaining the acronym in a New York Times piece, noted the term has caused confusion and there isn't universal agreement about what it means or whom it actually includes. But to most, the people of colour includes Latinos and Asians. Okay. At this point, I'm just doing backflips, not literally because I can't, but figuratively, I'm the best. So you have BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, People of Colour. Black is specified, Indigenous is specified, People of Colour, which at one point I thought Black and Indigenous was inside of that. Seemingly a separate thing, and so now People of Colour is only Latinos and Asians. So now there's almost a hierarchy. There's an oppression hierarchy or an oppression Olympics in that Black and Indigenous get specificity, other people don't. And also there's this weird confusion that Black and Indigenous is simultaneously inside person of colour, but it's also outside as a specified thing. Just let me know when this shit has solidified. Everything's fucking lucid and liquid and everything changes every 2 seconds. So there's no consensus, but here's the thing that I want to talk about, again, in regard to the who is deciding this stuff. Is it bottom up or top down? This may almost be a microcosm for progressivism in and of itself, and it lies within the word Latinx or Latinx. That was a joke, nobody actually says that. Again, page 18 of the Roman numerals. When I am speaking specifically about a racialized group of people, I use the current most recognizable term for that group. For example, Asian, Latinx, Indigenous, and Black. Okay. Here's the level of hubris. Page 18, Roman numerals. I just read that, Asian, Latinx, Indigenous, Black. However, scroll up. The person that she cites, this Garcia, Sandra Garcia, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to assume that this Garcia is Hispanic, Latino. She refers to them. People of colour includes Latinos and Asians. So Garcia calls them Latinos. Garcia being the actual person that term is talking about, Latinos. Robin specifically is like, oh yeah, I use the most recognizable terms, and then goes on to talk about Latinx on the same page, bro. So what do actual Latinos think about the term? Let's take a look.
Hispanic, Latino, or Latinx?
I identify as Hispanic.
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 Hispano o Latina? Hispano o Latina? Latina siempre.
What is Latinx?
Also, because I'll double down on a citation, triple down in fact, as you're about to see, because this is what academia does to a motherfucker. A Gallup poll, 57% use the word Hispanic. 37% use the term Latino. 5% use Latinx. 5% of the actual people that the term is for use it. 5%. Further, Pew, 76% have not heard of the term Latinx. 20% do not use Latinx but have heard of it. 3% use Latinx. Okay, I'm no mathematician or anything, but that doesn't seem like the most recognizable. So what is this actually about? What are these terms actually about? Is this by the people for the people? Is it actually about inclusivity, or is it about signaling? I'm in the clique, I actually use the correct terms, actually. So if this was done by any other group, it would probably be flagged as neo-colonialism. You know, colonialism, we're gonna take your land and do whatever we want with it. And then neo-colonialism is like, oh, well, we don't necessarily have your land, but we are colonizing your minds, your culture, so to speak. I would never tell you what to say, because what you say, how you use your own tongue, ayo, pause. how you use your own tongue is entirely up to you. But I do think you're kind of stupid if you use the term Latinx. And if there's any holdout, because I'm almost certain there's going to be one, well, actually, Latinx was made for the general neutral way of saying Latino or Latino. Well, bitch, that already exists. And that's called Latin. Where's your excuses now, bro? It's always been about signaling. It's never been about inclusivity. It's always been about we will tell you who you are. Okay, so now, precursor over. We can get to the source. How anti-racists see black people. And we'll get on to how they see themselves also, but for now, how they see black people. So this comes from a chapter called Let's Talk About Shame, which I'll come into more fully later, but I think this is interesting because it really reveals the 4D chess at play, let's say. Page 126 to 127. I told you we were in the final third. I was just doing intro stuff. Okay. 126 to 127. While my focus in this chapter is on shame, the concern about not making white people feel guilty continues to come up in discussion on racism, and although I have been clear about where I stand on the issue in my talks and writing, I feel the need to address it yet again. For example, Professor of English and Linguistics John McWhorter described my work as making white people feel guilty during an 8-minute debate on white fragility with Michael Eric Dyson. Choice quotes from McWhorter includes the claim that my book conveys the idea that as many white people as possible need to take themselves into the closet and flagellate themselves daily about their complicitness in whiteness before we can forge social change. He claims I am telling people that change can't happen until all white people feel so guilty that they don't want to get out of bed. This is clearly a joke, but also it's honestly not too far away from what the actual situation is. This is obviously a clear joke. This is a cherry pick, but also she gets the illusion, so to speak, of, well, I engage with my critics, but when they talk about they're so inflammatory and hyperbolic. Continuing, you'll see the point that I'm building to in a second, but continuing, she says on page 127, while John McWhorter is not white or progressive, he is not alone in his concern about invoking white guilt, although his concern seems particularly extreme. Not white or progressive. Hello, officer, there has been a crime. Can you describe him for me? Oh, yes, he's not white. Okay, so what race is he? He's not white. Okay, so what race? He's not white. Okay, do you see what I was talking about earlier? She's technically not incorrect in what she's saying by saying that he's not white, because John McWhorter is not white. Here's what he looks like. But it's this kind of sleight of hand that's like, am I going too 4D chess here? She explicitly doesn't say that he's black, because presumably at some point the reader will go, well, why would a black person disagree with what Robin DiAngelo has to say? Because Robin DiAngelo's the hero of the story. Something must be... But then, you know, it goes over your head when you're just reading, not white, and he's not progressive. It stops you questioning. The strangest thing, or an additional layer of strangeness, is that there's a point where she spends like a whole page and a half talking about whether you should capitalize the B in black or not, and the conclusion is that you should, but you don't have to do it for white, so the W in white. And so I'm like, if you're going to go down to such a level of specificity that you're going to be critical about whether the black is capitalized or not, but then when describing a black person, you simply refer to them as not white. I don't know why, but within academia, I have found that they tend to use the term castration when they needn't. Castration, for those of you that don't know, is when a person or animal gets its dick cut off. And often within academia, they'll use castration almost synonymously to say, I suppose, like disempowered. So, I don't know, you could say somebody was psychologically castrated. I don't know why they're using the symbolism of a penis to suggest that that's what power derives from, and therefore to be castrated means that you have your power taken away, or, I don't know, your potency taken away. But to me, if I were writing a bullshit essay about this, which honestly, from reading texts like these and everything I've seen online, I feel like I could piss out an essay and pass it as... legit. Anyway, this would probably fall under something that I could blag as racial castration. She took away his blackness, his potency as a black person, and merely referred to him as not white. That's racial castration. But it doesn't stop there, folks. The boulder rolling down the cliff gets worse. Page 165. On a daily basis, I receive conflicting feedback from BIPOC people. Black, Indigenous, people of colour people, and would be immobilised if I tried to follow all of it. Some BIPOC people undoubtedly have opinions I see as fundamentally wrong, and they can have personal issues and dysfunctions in the same ways that white people do. So, essentially, if you don't follow the herd, if you don't play your role, if you're not a black person in the way that she characterizes what a black person is, you essentially become white adjacent, because that's what she says. They have personal issues and dysfunctions in the same ways that white people do. It's also just like the perfect straw man, because it's like, well, if they disagree with me, there must be something wrong with them in the same way that so much is with the whites. No accountability, no responsibility, no good faith interpretation of what's being said. It's just, oh, well, they just have issues like the other white people. Depending on what you say or do, and whether I agree with it or not, we will take away your black card. Wow, where have I seen that before?
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Welcome to the 21st century, folks, where whiteness and blackness are now abstracts into the ether. They can be taken away from you and given back, seemingly, depending on what you do and think. I first came across this happening in 2019. There's a representative in America called Ayanna Pressley, and she had a quote or point that I noted down, wherein she said, Democrats don't need, quote, any more black faces that don't want to be a black voice. What does that mean exactly? A black face that doesn't have a black voice, because as we all know, a black voice is a monolithic thing. It's only one of them. And so if you don't believe the things that we do and say the things that we say, you're not in the clique anymore. Your black card erased. So if there's a disjunction between black face and black voice, can you have a white face with a black voice? Can you have a black face with a white voice? And I presume that's what the projection is. It's, well, you bat for the white people team because you don't agree. What? Bro. Let us tell you who you are. Let's use the threat of being ostracized to keep you in line. To add further context to what I'm saying, there was an instance, I believe in 2021, a woman by the name of Winsome Sears became lieutenant governor of Virginia, something that had never happened before. First black woman. We all know how much progressives love black women now for some reason. I'm not saying that you shouldn't love black women. I'm just saying there's a weird fetishization with it, or that's what it feels like to me sometimes. So here's how one outlet responded to that. The headline reads, such as, why white voters with racist views often still support black Republicans. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that if you're a person with racist views, you're probably not going to vote for a black person. Period. Period with the T, on God no cap. And if you remember, Robin DiAngelo pitted, or used the example of John McWhorter being pitted against Michael Eric Dyson, and he actually responded to the Winsome Sears thing, and here's how that went.
They want white supremacy by ventriloquist effect. There is a black mouth moving, but a white idea through the running on the runway of the tongue of a figure who justifies and legitimates the white supremacist practices.
You're black, but you're not black really. Okay, people always get mad when people draw parallels between this strain of thinking, so critical race theory, antiracism, so on, to Marxism. And I'm like, how is this not? There's a term within Marxism. In the first episode, we went over proletariat, bourgeoisie. Proletariat, generally speaking, working class, don't have that much influence. Bourgeoisie, the rich, control everything on top of. Reductionistic, simplistic, whatever, covered in the first episode. So that context. Within Marxism, there's also a group that is referred to, or within Marxist theory, there's a group of people called the lumpen proletariat, who essentially are proletariat people, so the have-nots, so to speak. It's the term used to describe members of that group that aren't rising up, because within Marxism, the prediction was that the proletariat would overtake the bourgeoisie, and then resources and whatever would be shared equitably, so on and so forth. But that didn't happen, and so there was an added part of the theorization, which was that, it's because they're now lumpen proletariat. They're not actually playing to what their class, they're not playing their role, so to speak. They're not behaving how we want them to or predicted them to, so to speak. And so in that similar way, that kind of, you're group X, but you're not behaving like group X, so we'll call you group Y. Hey, you're black, but you don't have a black voice, whatever that means, so you not that anymore, whether that's white adjacent or so on and so forth. This is precisely why identity politics, inclusivity type beat, it's a Trojan horse, bro. Whenever a black person, a person of colour that doesn't fit the hegemony's wants, they're dispensed with. It's seldom about inclusivity. It's about pushing an ideology, and the moment you don't support that, you get kicked to the curb. You're white adjacent. You have the neuroses that white people have. Oh, isn't that interesting? Because I thought it was Black Lives Matter, but I guess it's just the black lives that you agree with. To close out this section, I would like to circle back to one of the points that I brought up earlier, one of the quotes that I brought up earlier, which was the page 165, which was, some BIPOC people undoubtedly have opinions I see as fundamentally wrong, and they can have personal issues and dysfunctions in the same ways that white people do. Presumably, in her brain, there's the, they're not true black people, and, we already know that conservatives and libertarians, you don't get the black card, you get that taken away, whatever. But then, on the other side of the political spectrum, what I suppose is the liberal side, what do any of these terms mean at this point? You're liberal? I'm saying that it's not as though the only opposition that comes at Robin DiAngelo's doorstep, so to speak, it's not that it's conservatives always, or libertarians always, or whatever. It's people like me also, or other people that identify as either like liberal leaning or centrist or whatever. People like Coleman Hughes, Ayishat Akanbi, Sheena Mason, Africa Brooke, and the John McWhorter that she was so finger waggy to earlier. He's not white or progressive.
It's the strangest thing. Like, you read a book like, and we're going to have to be specific, White Fragility. That book is talking down to me as far as I'm concerned. It
really should be
used to
called
keep
Black
tables.
Fragility, right?
Yes. It should be used to keep tables from wobbling. That is the only use for that book. And yet,
This section I have titled, Black people are to be coddled, open bracket, black people are never wrong, close bracket. And we'll primarily be focusing on a section called How to Make a White Progressive a Better Racist, question mark. Because, as we have gone over, if you are a white person, you are always racist, and therefore to say a better racist, that's not saying a more effective racist, that's saying a morally better yet still racist person. It comes in the form of an anecdote, or this section that I'm about to read you is an anecdote from her experience. So this is her at one of her events, and somebody seemingly has an issue. You'll pick it up as I read it along. Page 163. Deferring, one of the most predictable questions I get from white people following a presentation or workshop is, but what if a person of colour is wrong and it isn't really racism? Robin DiAngelo's response to that is page 163 to 164. This is how she rationalises it, so to speak. After hours of evidence illustrating the enduring tragedy of systemic racism and anti-blackness over the last 400 years, beginning with genocide towards indigenous people and 400 years of kidnapping, enslavement, torture, and brutality towards African Americans, up through the present day with mass incarceration and police executions, with an epidemic in missing and murdered indigenous women and white nationalism on the rise, with children separated from parents and incarcerated at the Mexico border, and the consistent outcome of profound racist inequality at every measure. Why is it, but what if it isn't really racism, the first place so many white people go? That so many do powerfully illustrates how myopic, disconnected, and, might I say, racist we are. Okay. Do you see the layers to this? You simply ask, or simply suggest, well, this person, I think, is wrong, and it isn't because of their particular race. Her response then is what in the industry is referred to as a gish gallop. It's accusation one after another. You know, there's a show in the UK called Fire in the Booth. Fire in the Booth! And there's a DJ called Charlie Sloth who is infamous for pressing the explosion button sound effect. Example. I just imagine that that is precisely what was happening here. How can you say that after genocide, explosion, and 400 years of explosion? It's entirely circular reasoning. It's, hey, you just did a racism. And the fact that you can't see that you just did a racism is proof that you're a racism. You're a witch. I'm not a witch. That's exactly what a witch would say. Like, what? Where are the standards of accountability? This is what is referred to as the soft bigotry of low expectations. Well, they don't need to prove themselves, and the fact that you think that they do is actually a racism. Tell that to fucking Juicy Smouye, bitch. Should we have been less interrogative towards him?
The whole country was up in arms. It was talking about it all the time on the news, and for some reason, African Americans, we were like oddly quiet because we understood that this nigga was clearly lying.
The fact that you're questioning him is proof of a racism. It doesn't matter if he lied. Continuing, page 165. Yes, even after accounting for all the dynamics discussed above, it is possible that a person of colour may simply be exaggerating, excusing bad behaviour, or just plain wrong. Maybe they really did misunderstand me. But in most cases, if you can just defer, why not do so? Given the centuries in which BIPOC people have been trying to get white people to stop denying racism, given how many millions of times they have not been wrong, but we have refused to own up, why focus on a theoretical exception to the rule? It is a healthy interruption to white superiority and racial arrogance to defer to BIPOC people in those infrequent cases. Often, all that is at risk is our pride. How is this not the most condescending shit you've ever heard in your fucking life? But hey, let him have this one. He needs this. They need what? Bro, this is the biggest cap of my life. All that's at dignity is your risk or pride. Hey, maybe, can you do me a favor? Can you just suspend your reasoning faculties? Can you just suspend your morality and just give him this one? Does that seem like equal treatment to you? Does that seem like special rights to you? I found an example that really shows the intersectional axioms at play, the oppression Olympics at play, so to speak. A few months ago, there was an instance where Lil Nas X, a rapper and singer, he was doing publicity for an, at the time, upcoming album called Montero. He did a photo shoot pose wherein he was pregnant. I am on the verge of giving birth to my new album. It's pretty straightforward. Okay. Here's the axis. How it started. Lil Nas X's use of fake pregnancy is insensitive and transphobic. Oh, that's something that could ruin a career if true. How it ended. Calling out Lil Nas X was rooted in anti-blackness and other things I've learned in the past few days. Okay. So person A accuses Lil Nas X of being transphobic. Why is it transphobic? Seemingly, again with axioms at play, me playing to their matrix of morality, let's say, that was seemingly a transphobic act, but that was negated by the person doing it being black, because the criticism of black people is inherently rooted in anti-blackness. Therefore, the act isn't transphobic, and the person that accused them of being transphobic is now racist and rooted in anti-blackness. Like, what if the person in question happened to be white? What if it's a fucking Jack Harlow pretending to be pregnant? Because the only reason that this accusation of transphobia was retracted was because, I mean, first of all, it's the internet and you can't criticize and whatever. At what point are we going to start talking about black privilege? Because in that instance, it was actually, it was a shield, you know? It's weird. It's almost as if the white elite, the progressive elite, see black people in the same way that perhaps you would see a child, in that a child is simultaneously below you, but has authority above you at the same time. But here's the clinker. She just, at one point, completely undermines herself. And it's like, so why are you even writing on this topic in the first place? Let me read the quote. Page 164. Second, my not seeing or not understanding how something is racist is not the most reliable criteria, given my socialization not to understand racism. Racism comes from me, not at me. But there is a point at which I need to simply accept the feedback I am given and focus on repair. So, if your lived experience isn't congruent with racism, black people, and understanding the situation inherently, why are you talking about this? And why are you the most popular person to talk about it? Why? And so if white people, even her, the Archbishop of anti-racism, don't have the credibility to talk about racism purely because of the cosmic chance of their birth that they happen to be white, then what happens is black people become the moral arbiter, and that can sometimes be a problem, because sometimes even we don't know if somebody did a racism. For instance, this is Charlemagne. He, primarily I know him from podcasts and The Breakfast Club, but he either was on or continues to be on a show on Comedy Central. And one of the episodes, they did an episode on critical race theory, CRT.
Why are they so determined to keep critical race theory out of our classrooms?
So that's why I bring him up as an example, sometimes we don't even know. So roll the clip.
Right? I know exactly what that black dude was going through in that moment.
Yeah.
Because you're questioning yourself. You're like, was that racist?
Yeah, what is he actually saying?
I wrote about that in Shook One. Like, literally, I was in the office. I was in a meeting with a big-time executive, president of a network. This was years ago. And he said to me, he goes, boy, you really doing your thing. I don't remember nothing else from the meeting. Because in my mind, I'm like, did he call me a boy?
Yeah.
Like, did he call me a boy? And you don't know how to react.
Yeah.
You say, yo, don't call me no boy, like whatever. So I'm just sitting there. Then his secretary or somebody walked in. And I don't know if it was, I think it was raining. And he goes, boy, it's raining hard out there. And I'm like, oh, that's just the way he talks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But when you're black, or maybe even a woman, and I'm sure even white people get that now too in certain cases. Like when you hear certain things, you like, is that racist? Is that sexist? Should I say something? Should I not say something?
Who decides if there's because in texts like these, there seems to be this idea that you just defer. If you did a racism, you just apologize and focus on repair. But I didn't do a racism, though. It doesn't matter. All that's at stake is your, what'd you say? All that's at stake is your pride. That's not all that's at stake, bro. Can we be honest and sincere with each other or not? Are you my equal or not? Or are you a baby? Are you a child emperor that I must bow to? Who decides? Should you just defer to people if something is interpreted as a racism? Sometimes it genuinely is. And invariably there's going to be that person that's like, I wasn't being racist, when they overtly are. I don't know. You bring a fucking sandwich to lunch and you're an Indian, but your white friend goes, oh, what kind of curry is that? This is clearly a sandwich. You know that. You're being a dick. And I wasn't being racist though. It's kind of racist. Whatever. But again, this idea of just defer. Suck my fucking... But this, ladies and gentlemen, is where it goes full mask off on... Honestly, bigger than the race thing. It's just radical subjectivity. I get to decide what things mean depending on the axioms, the ideological axioms that I have chosen. So page 164. First, you cannot sort out race from a cross-racial interaction any more than you can sort out gender from a cross-gender interaction. I may not be consciously thinking of race or gender in every moment, but I am always implicitly aware, and that awareness has an impact on everything that happens in that interaction. Implicit bias. I can just assume that a good thing or a bad thing that you do to me is because of some characteristic that I hold. You behave that way to me because I'm black. You behave that way to me because I'm a woman. You behave that way to me because X, Y, and Z. Radical subjectivity. To the title of this, this idea that black people are meant to be coddled, it's seemingly, to me, it's people that believe in white fragility, which I'm not saying is an entirely invalid idea, but the ideas within the book are fucking dog shit. People that believe in white fragility, I think, assume a black fragility, that we're these need to be coddled little children with bones of glass, and you can't say that because that's a microaggression. And that's precisely how we get to white people taking offense on behalf of black people when they needn't need to. Bro.
We're living in a time now where people argue on behalf of black people about things black people aren't even upset about. I heard this one white lady online. She's like, I'm upset and outraged by the lack of diversity in Tim Burton movies.
Interestingly, the Chinese have a term to talk about the whites, the progressive whites. It's called Bai Cao. I've invariably butchered that, and that's just the way that it's going to have to be. Bai Cao is a Chinese epithet meaning naive Western educated person who advocates for peace and equality only to satisfy their own feeling of moral superiority. Wow. What do you know? So let's move on. We have been speaking about how white people see black people for a hot minute. So now let's move on to how white people see themselves. This section is called Shame and Self-Flagellation, and we'll be looking at page 121. Here's the excerpt. I just said it, bro. 121. Pay attention, bro. Page 121. In opening the same narrative to examination, I ask white people in my workshops to turn to one another and share as honestly as possible their reflection on the following question. On a weekly basis, during what percentage of your day do you feel racial shame? In answering the question myself, if I am being honest, I can say that whole days can pass without feeling racial shame. When I do feel racial shame, it makes up 1 to 2% of my day. I don't know how the fuck she's quantifying this, but she's doing it. So she's a race scholar and mathematician, apparently. Perhaps on my way to Whole Foods, I must walk past an indigenous man who appears homeless lying on the sidewalk. I see him from down the block, and in that moment I become hyper-conscious of our racial positions. My whiteness suddenly feels very loud, and I know that he knows that I am an imposter and a hypocrite. Can you just hear the fucking neurosis of this woman, bro? That my privilege and comfort, my access to resources are dependent on his position in relation to mine, dependent on his oppression. Bro, how the fuck is this not Marxism, bro? Are you capping, bro? Okay, I just gotta get, bro, are you... Look, I'm just going to continue, but like, you read it out loud again for the real time, and the thing, people deny so much that this is rooted in Marxism. Oh, this is Marxism, you don't understand Marxism correctly, you don't understand academia, you're not an academic, or what? It's like, bro. Okay, so things of note there. She had to get in that she shops at Whole Foods. Flex. I'm not broke like you, I shop at Whole Foods, dickhead. She also has a very perceptive eye. She can spot an indigenous person from ways away, and then goes into a whole mind-reading scenario where she knows what he is thinking, and he's thinking some variation of Marxism. You know what? I'm not saying he deserves to be homeless, but if he knows what Marxism is and double down on it in that way, no wonder you broke, bro. All you know is theory. I'm kidding, but also, there's a point where she makes a distinction between shame and guilt, and one of them is internal, one of them is external. There's not that much relevance, honestly, in regard to her situation of walking past the homeless man, Whole Foods, whatever, because her point is, you know, guilt, shame, blah, blah. She could have helped that one particular person. She couldn't have stopped homelessness as a whole, but she could have done something, you know, give this man $1, you know what I mean? Give him 100 stacks, you know what I mean? You get paid 14 grand per session. You couldn't have slid him a 20, bro. She goes on to talk about shame and the performance of it, and I think it's interesting. Let's take a look. This is page 124. In this way, shame functions to deny our power and excuse our paralysis, allowing us to indulge in a sense of our own victimization. Both Bell Hooks and Audre Lorde have noted that feeling bad about racism or white privilege can function as a form of self-centeredness in which white progressives turn the focus back onto themselves. Hooks considered shame to be the performance of whiteness and not an indicator that whiteness was being interrupted. Ideological underpinnings of that aside, so, you know, the whiteness and the whatever, I agree to that. I have been around and heard the likes of too many white progressives that do the whole, oh, heavens to be white. It's also somewhat of like a covert way to try and get approval. It's like, oh, I'm sorry about your oppression, old chap, but I'm one of the good ones. It's like, bro, I do not share the ideological axioms that you do. So you trying to fucking suck my dick, trying to be like, oh, but I, you know, we're in the same group now. No, bro. I don't like... I think the self-flagellation that white progressives do is interesting, because I think it's revealing of a kind of hubris. There's a commentator, philosopher, I can't pronounce his name. I think he's Eastern European, and I've only ever seen his name written, so I'm going to bastardize this. I'm sorry. Slavoj Zizek. I'll put a picture up. Slavoj Zizek? Bro, for all intents and purposes, this person is a fan of Marx. This is a left-leaning person. And so, because I'm a good guy, I'm actually Iron Manning a point, because I'm not going to someone, presumably this person is more aligned with a Robin DiAngelo type on the political spectrum, whatever, even though that's bullshit. Leftists only accept criticism from other leftists, is what I'm saying. That's why I've picked this person. Okay, so this Slavoj Zizek, he shares this joke. There's an old Jewish joke, and supposedly the joke is something to the effect of, there's
Jewish believers meet in a synagogue and each of them says something. So first, a big rabbi said, oh my God, I am nobody. I am not worthy of your attention, God. Then a rich Jewish merchant comes and says, oh my God, I'm also nobody. Don't even consider me. I'm not worthy of your attention. Then, I hope you know the joke, a poor Jew stands up and says, God, I'm also a nobody. And then the rich merchant kicks the rabbi and said, who is this guy that he thinks he can also say that he is a nobody?
There's a certain hierarchy illuminates itself to an extent by how much the person is willing to put themselves down, to self-deprecate, let's say, because you have to have status to be able to undersell yourself in the first place. There's just a weird double standard where if a white person goes, oh heavens to be white, it's all applaud, a good person, oh you're down with the ideological soup, you know. But if a black person does oh to be black, it's like, oh you poor thing, what do you... I just find it weird that minorities inherently have to be proud of something that they didn't have choice over. Minorities have to be prideful, whilst the whites get to steer into shame. What was the thing from Nat Geo? I'm ashamed of my ancestors' race. This is the final boss of white guilt, I would say. As we've gone over, there's no monolith for what it means to be white or what it means to be black and so on, even though books like these seemingly enforce that idea. But if there's anything for an intersection for white and progressive, what does that mean? What's white progressive culture? It seems to be being ashamed of being white. That seems to be the X marks the spot, I would say. Oh, heavens to be white, you know. And if this still isn't clicking for you, for what a progressive is, the self-flagellation, it's this audience right here.
Some more news. The results of the 2020 census just came out, and for the first time in American history, the number of white people went down.
This section is called Robin's History and Her Speculative Psychology. This section is still kind of bad holistically, but it's probably the most compelling part of the book. And when I was reading it, I was primarily reading it in chunks. And so I opened up to this chapter called How White People Who Experience Other Oppression Can Still Be Racist, or But I'm a Minority Myself. It was the most compelling chapter for reasons that I'm sure you'll see in a second, but it still sits with me in a way that is uncomfortable, let's say. And from there we'll riff on what is the psychology of Robin DiAngelo? What is the psychology of a Robin DiAngelo type? Page 148 to 149. My mother, Marianne DiAngelo, died in 1967 at the age of 34. I was 11. I share my class background because it deeply informs my understanding of race. From an early age, I had the sense of being an outsider. I was acutely aware that I was poor, that I was dirty, that I was not normal, and there was something wrong with me. But I also knew that I was not black. We were of the lower rungs of society, but there was always someone on the ladder just below us. I knew that coloured meant black and that black people should be avoided. I can remember many occasions when I reached for candy or uneaten food lying out in public and was admonished by my grandmother not to touch it because a coloured person may have touched it. Open hostility towards different races, segregation, finger waggy bad. And I'm also curious about to what extent that this was kind of cultivated, because, you know, if you're down bad, so to speak, it's probably healthy for you to know that you're not on the very, very lowest ladder rung. And so it's this kind of, you know, it could be worse. You could be one of the blacks, so you should count yourself lucky. The reason why I bring up this chapter is because I think we see the seeds that lead to the blossoming of the kind of Robin DiAngelo that we see today, which is why I want to introduce the idea that, in my estimation, Robin DiAngelo needs anti-racism more than anti-racism needs her. Page 149. I left home as a teenager and struggled to survive. As I looked at what lay ahead, I could see no path out of poverty other than education. The decision to take that path was frightening to me. I had never gotten the message that I was smart and academia was a completely foreign social context. And then tagging onto that 151 to 152, rather than finding that centering racism denies my own experience of oppression, I have found that centering racism has been a profound way to address the complexity of all my social locations. So it seems like she felt worthless before, then she found academia, and there's almost like a watershed moment, and it almost feels a bit like a religious enlightenment, so to speak. She became born again. She was saved. She knew now of her whiteness, her sinful ways, and now she's on the other side, and that has become her new identity. She then goes on to point out that whilst her poorness, so to speak, has eroded over time, her whiteness has remained. Because she says, page 150, while I still carry the marks of poverty, those marks are now only internal. She said, I've got fucking money, bro. With your fucking broke ass. Because whiteness is a superpower, as we went over in episode 1. So, you know, she still has the whiteness that she feels bad about and whatever, but at least she's not broke anymore, you know what I mean? I'm gonna keep it as stack, bro. I am also a person that grew up poor, and I'm still pretty poor now. Subscribe to the Patreon. Where am I going with this? I relate to her on the poorness thing. It's like, oh, people have more than me, that's upsetting. And then there were also instances where I experienced racism, genuine racism. I make a distinction between genuine racism and not genuine racism. Episode 1, I'm not gonna... So I have the broke thing and the black thing. Nowadays, the broke thing isn't as bad, and the black thing, I only really feel a type of way about. The only people, generally speaking, that have made me feel remotely bad about my skin colour within the past 10 years are usually white progressives. Because, oh, you poor little thing, you haven't got as much privilege as me. I'm going to do a little bit of armchair psychology here. This comes from White Fragility, so the original book, on page 90. Essentially... And I think Robin would agree. I think Robin DiAngelo is actually racist. I don't mean, oh, racist in the way that all white people are racist, lyrical, miracle, spherical. I mean, she has negative associations towards black people in a way that she can't even help them. She says, this is White Fragility, page 90. I remind readers that I am addressing white people at the societal level. I have friends who are black and whom I love deeply. I do not have to suppress feelings of hatred and contempt as I sit with them. I see their humanity, but on the macro, I also recognize the deep anti-black feelings that have been inculcated in me since childhood. These feelings surface as immediately, in fact, before I can even think, when I conceptualize black people in general. The weird thing that sticks out to me, that makes me think that it's a little bit sus. I do not have to suppress feelings of hatred and contempt as I sit with them. Thanks for pointing that out, Robin DiAngelo. That, to me, I read that. It's like a person that's overcompensating, you know? It's like if you show your friend a picture of your baby and the friend goes,
listen, I don't mean this in a creepy way, but your baby's really cute.
You go, if you'd have just said, your baby's really cute, I would have thought nothing of it, but you prefacing by saying, I don't mean this in a creepy way, in the same way where she's like, I don't have to suppress my feelings of hatred towards black people. If you hadn't have said that, I wouldn't have questioned it, but now that you've said it, you seem kind of weird, bro. You're moving Naji, you're moving back. It's not that I'm racist, it's that we're all racist. It's not that I shit my pants, it's that we all shit our pants together. No, bro, you don't have to come out and say that every white person is racist because that's how you feel. You don't go, well, I'm a white person and I feel racist, therefore they're white people and they're racist also. No, bro, you can fix your psyche, bro. Or maybe you can't, you're like 60 something. I feel like if you're, I don't know, if you get to 60, bro, just double down at that point, you know what I mean? Just commit to the racism. In trying to derive Robin's psychology, you know, from reading 2 of her books, I feel like, and earlier on when I did that Gish Gallop, the thing of, and this thing, and that thing, and that thing, you kind of get into the mentality, the psyche of a person that thinks like this, and that illuminated to me why she has such bad rationale in so many instances. There's a whole bunch of cognitive distortions that are found. The book is riddled, my G. Polarized thinking, it's this way or that way. overgeneralizations. White people are like this, black people are like that. Catastrophizing. This is the worst thing and most pressing thing in the personalization. Here are all these stories that make you all racist. I'm not projecting, I'm just saying how it is. Mind reading. We saw that earlier with the indigenous man that knew about Marxism. You know, she got into a paranoid state of like, oh, he knows that I'm a fraud and the only reason I have these things is because I'm white. And then the book is also just littered with logical fallacies. So at points where I thought it was starting to make an okay point, it being the book, I'm not saying that her pronoun is it, obviously, is like, is she cherry picking? Is she making a false dichotomy? Is she straw manning? Is she creating a Kafka trap? Is she no true Scotsmaning? And the answer, in all likelihood, is yes. There's also a term called progressophobia, which is the idea of a person that can't see progress of the times. There was an instance in White Fragility where Robin makes the point that she doesn't actually think that racism has gotten better, even though it demonstrably has. Better meaning it's not as prevalent. In between like the 1960s and now, her point is, oh, racism actually hasn't gotten better. If anything, it may have actually gotten worse because it's more covert now. It's like, no, bro, you just can't admit it because then you'd be out of a job. As I mentioned in the previous episode, I genuinely feel sorry for racist people that for one reason or another, they can't help the way that their brain has settled into its wiring. They see a black person or an otherwise person of color and, I don't know, their heart rate goes up. Maybe something bad happened to them in the past, whatever. That's rooted in them. So I'm not bringing this up to, oh, Robin's a racist or whatever, because, you know, I feel sorry for her. And also, the reason why I'm doing this series isn't because I have a thing in particular for Robin DeYoung, it's what she represents, bro. However you slice it, whether it's the lyrical spherical miracle racism or the normative version of I don't like you because of your skin color, whatever, I think Robin DiAngelo is racist, which is why I presume whenever she sees a black person, her first thought is,
disgusting black creatures, get out of my sight.
And now the penultimate point that I would like to make. I would like to introduce the idea that anti-racism is a secular religion. Before I get into it, I want to add a reminder or a refresher. 1888. In 1888, Nietzsche announced that God is dead. Even though Nietzsche was a critic of religion, and therefore people interpreted him announcing that God is dead to be that, oh, he must be happy about that then, because he's a critic of religion. No, actually, because he was worried, I guess, there was a better word to use there, but he was worried essentially what would replace it. And as far as I can tell, it's texts like these that are leading the way, and honestly many of the other things that fall under the social justice umbrella. Are they about justice? Whatever. I've mentioned this before, or mentioned this guy before, Durkheim. I think I mentioned him in my Q&A, and I was mentioning how he characterizes religion, and so here's an excerpt for that, you know, in leading into my idea that anti-racism is a religion. A religion is a unified system of beliefs and practices relative to sacred things, that is to say, things set apart and forbidden, beliefs and practices which unite in one single community called a church, all those who adhere to them. Religion is a system of beliefs and structure, practices, so on. Freud also chimes in, if you want to expel religion from our European civilizations, you can only do it by means of another system of doctrines, and a system would from the outset take over all the psychological characteristics of religion, the sanctity, rigidity, and intolerance, the same prohibition of thought. How is that not the most on-the-nose shit from texts like these, bro? Just non-stop bangers, you know what I mean? And even though these people wrote them, I cited them to you, so I, by extension, am a genius. So yeah, I think anti-racism is somewhat of a religion, and I'm going to go through that in a second, didactically. I think it's a religion at most, and at the very least, it is a doctrine. Open bracket, cult, close bracket. Some of the parallels that I'm about to draw are a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I don't think that they're nothing. I think there's something in them. I think there is a religious impulse within basically every human. And I think at one point that was captured by generally speaking, or in the West at least, the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, other ones also, but that seemingly has dissolved and we've become more secular, or we think we've become more secular at least. But to me, I feel like the religious impulse is still there, and so that frame simply is getting filled with something else, and I think the religion of anti-racism is one of them. So here's a few rapid-fire, rudimentary parallels. Again, some are tongue-in-cheek, some of them are more valid than others, but I don't think that they're nothing. So, within overt religion, if you do something bad, it's blasphemy or sacrilege. In this ideology, it is problematic. Religion, if you get sent away, you are excommunicated. In this instance, if you are sent away, it's because you have been cancelled. In religion, you go to confession when you have done something wrong. In circles like these, you take accountability, and that accountability is to the mob, and the mob is never satisfied. In a religious sense, when you reach the promised land, so to speak, you become enlightened. In circles such as these, you become woke. Asterisk to that one, because woke, I feel like at this point has become a pejorative. Like, woke is, haha, I think you're silly. Whereas there was an instance around 2010 to 2014, 15, woke was actually cool to say, that maybe not a lot of people actually remember. People said stay woke, for instance, non-ironically. It's like, oh, because the forces are always around, bro. You gotta stay woke, bro. Parallel, original sin, whiteness. Page 91 of White Fragility, the previous book. Anti-blackness is foundational to our very identities as white people. And then on page 9 of Nice Racism, this is how deep it goes, bro. We can reflect on how race has been shaping us from before we took our first breath and will continue to do so until our last. You're so racist to your core that you were racist before you even took your first breath. Are you... More religious parallels, yet seemingly anti-racism. If you're truly an anti-racist, it's embodied, and you also partake in the scripture. Page 188, 181. An anti-racist lens should also be operating continuously, transforming who is in my life, who I connect with, what I see, what I care about, what I talk about, what I read about, what I buy, how I work, what I am willing to feel. That's mad. What I can bear to witness, what discomfort I can withstand, and what risks I am willing to take. How is that not a belief system, a doctrine, an all-encompassing, in a religious context, you aspire to be God-like, but can't. In an anti-racist context, you can aspire to be anti-racist, but can't. Page 56. I don't think there is anybody here who's fully anti-racist. Part of being anti-racist is recognizing the ways in which we are steeped in racism and that it imbues our thoughts and our judgments in really surprising and surreptitious ways. We have to constantly be on guard against them. Attributed to Ian Haney Lopez. If you are white, your destiny is merely to roll the boulder of anti-racism up the mountain, but you can never get it up there. That is your Sisyphean journey. It is unattainable. You are voluntarily subjecting yourself to tyranny. One of the great ironies of anti-racism, and leftism in general, the left's poster boy, Karl Marx, right? He said that religion is the opiate of the masses. So him being poster boy of the leftists then said, okay, religion is the opiate of the masses. But with that being said, let's create a religion, but not call it one. I'm gonna keep it a stack, bro. I've got like 2 pages of notes that I've just skipped over because I've been at it for like 3 hours, you know what I mean? My ass is sore. Man's fucking tired, G. I just want to cap off by mentioning once again that whilst it's true that people have ideas, sometimes ideas have people. You are a captive slave to ideology. All I'm saying is I'm not the only person that thinks that this thing is a religion, which is why previously described not white John McWhorter has released a book called Woke Racism: How a New Religion Has Betrayed Black America.
Whenever you see these sorts of things happening and you see brilliant people making arguments that don't make any sense, and utterly despising those who disagree with them as if they were heretics, word chosen deliberately. It's because what we're seeing, even though these are people who are usually very secular in their self-conception, it's a religion. This is exactly the kind of person who sent Galileo into exile a very, very long time ago. And the people back then often didn't think of themselves as religious. It was just considered truth.
And just when you thought you wouldn't see me again, like a black stereotype, I turned up exceptionally late. So there's one final thing I want to impart with you, dear viewer, and for the astute of you, you'll already know that, because I introduced the previous section with the word penultimate, meaning second from last. Wow, haven't you learned a new word today, baby boy? It's going to be a short point, and then I am going to foreshadow the future of the channel, so you know, more bits for you to get excited about. Before I introduce the final point, I need to do all the normal YouTube stuff, so you know, the drop the comment, please, bro. Engage in the conversation. Like I said in the beginning, I am imparting half of this. If you could do the rest, bro, that would be poggers. Of course, drop a like for the kid, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell if you haven't already, because YouTube doesn't always play fair with this channel, so the likelihood that you'll see a thing from me unless you have the bell hit is pretty negligible, you know? You've liked the content so far, you know, you're gonna be trying to slurp up the rest, you know what I mean? So, okay, I'm gonna stop. Share this to someone that if you think they'll be interested in content like this, whether that's someone in your real life or online. As I said in the beginning, there will be no ads, and there were no ads, meaning that I will be making 0 schmeckles from this video. So if you would like to support the kid, apparently in the hiatus of time, you can drop the schmeckles comment if you would like, but the best way to support me is probably signing up for the Patreon, and then you get your name immortalized in these videos like the rest of these people up above and down below when I edit them in. All of this is me, I'm doing like 50 people's jobs, bro. Okay. So this final point that I've been alluding to, this final additional point, is almost taking a critical theory lens to critical race theory itself. Who are the key beneficiaries of this being propagated so deeply into public consciousness? Critical race theory, CRT, anti-racism. I'll tell you this at the very least. The beneficiaries are most certainly not black people like they seemingly propose will be the case. And to be honest, a lot of the organizations that purport to be for the benefit of black people don't even do those also. Try googling BLM $6 million mansion, for instance. Oh, your good little good boy pounds and dollars and pennies that you thought was going to a good cause? No, they're just buying luxury items, but it doesn't matter because you've got BLM in your Twitter handle, so you're a good person, aren't you? Pat on the bottom. Oh, aren't you a little good boy or girl? The true conflict is not between black or white, BIPOC or white for that matter. It is us versus the techno-aristocracy. Those that control narratives, those that control the technology we use. What messages can go in and out? If all the people at the bottom are fighting amongst each other, then they won't realise how fucked they are getting by the people above them. And so, of course, the people at the top are overwhelmingly happy with people like Robin DiAngelo, the Ibram X. Kendis of the world, because to them, these people are effectively useful idiots, pawns in a bigger game. And the worst part of all of this, perhaps, is that despite all the time I have spent deconstructing how ridiculous what the actualities of anti-racism are, air quote, anti-racism. Some of you are still going to call yourself that. Oh, I'm an anti-racist. Dude, I'm reading your guys' texts. I'm barely even doing exposing. A lot of it is just reciting the core texts, the core messages to you of your supposed movement. Not you, perhaps the viewer. I'm talking to the the anti-racists, Twitter bio anti-racist, you know what I mean? The marketing is too strong. The unearned virtue that you get is too strong. But maybe not. Hopefully the tides are turning. We'll see. You know, hopefully I can think that I have played a role in that. That being said, I think I'm gonna pause from the investigations of anti-racism and whatnot and set sail elsewhere. New series alert, so get excited for that, I suppose. I've been hard at work in between this time, theorizing and putting my thoughts in order, and I think I've got some interesting bits to show you with my neurotic personality. Not neurotic, I'm quirky, bro. It's quirky. Okay, we're gonna try something else. Because, after all...
Sometimes you gotta close the door to open a window.